So in this moment, I acknowledge the one life that is living in me, through me, and as me. It is the source of all creation, unlimited, eternal, all-powerful. And in its creation is this givingness, giving of itself to create and place itself in all things. And because it is creating all, it supports all, loves all through this giving. And so as I realize this truth, that I am held and supported by this life, it is one life, living, opening all possibilities. In every moment, my life is new. And I know that this is the truth of me, for that is all that it is. And because it is true for me, I know it is true for all beings, all things in this world and beyond. For all is made of this life, this power, this love. And so as I speak my word, I know that I am free. I am free to step into this life right now for all possibilities, all opportunities, for me to live my fullest being, my fullest, joyful, loving life is right here, right now. And I know that this is true for all. I know that because all is created new, that the past has no hold on me. All of the old beliefs, the old patterns fall away like an old cocoon. And I am free as I step forward into the now, into what I may be, as that spirit and that one life is expressing through me. And for this I give great thanks. For I open my heart to step into life fearlessly, knowing all is possible in this life. And I know that this is true for all. And so today I give great thanks for this rebirth of myself in knowing I am free. And so I simply claim this for myself and for all, with joy and gratitude. And together we simply say, and so it is.
So happy Easter. And as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of in the conflux of three different holidays, with Passover in the Jewish tradition and Ramadan in the Muslim tradition. And so it's a wonderful time to celebrate, and to celebrate spring. Earlier this week, one night I had a dream. And I had this dream, some version of this dream, about every quarter or so, every 3 to 6 months. And I call it my ministerial confusion dream, right? And I'm trying to do a service and all sorts of things are in the way. and I can't quite get there, or I've left my talk behind, or something like that. So in this particular dream, Brent over here was directing our orchestra from over here. We have an orchestra, did you know that? At least in my dream we do. And what we were trying to do is play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which, in case you don't know, is about an hour and 10 minutes long, properly done. And so we had a stage manager who was insisting that that was too much time, we should only do the first movement. And so he and I and Brent were in a loud argument, so I fired him, the stage manager, not Brent. But I told him, but just for the day. Apparently in my dreams, I dream in the green V meme, for those who know spiral dynamics. And then, so we decided to do the fourth movement, and Denny and somebody else were there singing badly, not the fourth movement of that, not the Ode to Joy. And there were some people in the band that were playing, in the orchestra, that were playing some instruments that would not normally be orchestral instruments, and they sounded bad. And then I'm trying to do the talk, but there's this humongous mound in the middle of the sanctuary. And this is a sanctuary that has, balconies and people on all sides and like that. And then I'm trying to bless the offering, but I keep getting interrupted. And a former minister that usually shows up as a very critical person in my dream was this time showing up as a little baby who was cooing in my arms. And then I woke up. And that's transformation. Easter is all about transformation, whether it's the return of nature from seeming death of winter, or the Christian resurrection story. It's all about rising from the ashes of the old into something completely new and completely reborn. And in comparison, transition refers to trying to make things better in our existing reality. So when I'm in this dream, I'm trying to work everything out, right? I'm struggling to work everything out. I'm trying to rearrange the status quo for the better, while transformation is breaking free from the status quo completely, allowing something completely new to emerge. So upon awakening, there was no need to struggle anymore, right? In this dream. Awakening from this dream. I woke up, all was calm, all was in order. I was in my bed, everything was good. So I didn't have to struggle with the apparent reality of the dream. So I have to say that I don't believe in fertility goddesses bringing spring to us. It's a lovely story, I don't believe in it. I don't believe in Easter bunnies leaving little eggs for kids to find. Aww. It's a wonderful story. And we enact it. And I also have to say, and this might upset a couple people, I don't believe in resurrecting messiahs as factual, real things. There it is. However, there's a deep archetypal truth. It may not be factual, but there's a truth in these stories, which can help us as we approach life, as we approach and go through transformation. And most people, if they're asked, would you be willing to do some transformation, would say, let me get back to you on that. Some would rush in and say, yes, I want transformation right away, because they don't understand what transformation really involves and really entails. That true transformation takes a complete surrender, a letting go of our a letting go of our current paradigm of reality, which means letting go of our comfortable way of living. Sorry. I remember in the story of The Hobbit, when Gandalf has invited Bilbo to go off on this adventure, Bilbo looks at Gandalf the wizard and says, "Can you guarantee that I'll return? Can you guarantee that I'll come back?" And Gandalf says, "No. And if you do, you won't be the same. The I that exists now will not come back." We all go through transformation, whether we like it or not. We did so at birth. Some people have never recovered. We will do so at death. And if we pay attention and are willing to flow with life, we will experience numerous transformations during our life. And we can either surrender and go willingly, or we can kick and scream, digging in our heels, clinging desperately to how we want it to be. That was that little voice that said no over there. And we all have that little voice, by the way. But like a child, this is perfect timing, but like a child who refuses to go where they need to go, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to life. We're going to go anyway. But our wise self, our inner wisdom knows that it's time to change. Resistance is futile. We just experience pain and struggle if we resist instead of flow. So as we look at the Jesus resurrection story, we see the elements of transformation at play. So let's take a look at some of these elements. It starts with last week's triumphant entrance into Jerusalem. Yes, people are shouting, Hosanna in the highest, King of the Jews. They're laying palm fronds and their cloaks down as he rides in on an ass. I always like to say that ministers are allowed to say hell, damn, and ass as words because we have to in talking about the stuff. That was an aside. Whatever. In the early 13th century poem of Parsifal, who's a knight, a wannabe knight, enters King Arthur's court in great celebration. He's defeated who he needs to defeat, and he's going to be honored and sat at the round table, which is the highest honor that a knight could receive. But in the midst of the celebration, right as he's there, in rides the sorceress Kundry, who's described as being hideous, like a bear with tusks, riding an old mule. And she proceeds to just tear him down and say, this is what you forgot to do. This is what you forgot to do. This is who you left wounded in your wake. This, all this stuff. To detail all of his failures. In his book, The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks talks about something called the upper limit problem coming into play. An upper limit problem is when it gets too good, we'll do something to readjust downwards. All of us know that, whether we know about it or not. And so just as we achieve some success we have wanted, something seemingly externally wrecks it, and we're taken down, or something out of our past comes back to haunt us. And this is often the entryway into transformation. This is often the portal, the gateway into true transformation. We're called to look into our own shadow spaces, into our own shame, if you will, and sit with the darkness of our own unconsciousness. To begin an integration and movement toward a more full realization of our wholeness. To realize our true magnificence, which is not a magnificence of the ego, but of our soul, of our capital T, true self. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist teacher, said, don't throw suffering away, use it. Your suffering is the compost that gives you the understanding to nourish your happiness and the happiness of others. Your suffering, our entering into this portal, our falling from grace, seeming grace, or falling from success, falling out of our ego's idea of what success is the compost that gives you the understanding to nourish your happiness and the happiness of others. So at the height of his popularity, when he's just written in, the next day what Jesus does is he curses the fig tree for not giving fruit out of season. And this is seen as a metaphor. The Jewish people are referred to, especially by several of the prophets, as the fruit of the fig tree of life. And so it's seen as a curse for the Jews who will not accept him as the Messiah. It's a symbolic process. And that's followed by, he goes into the temple and drives out the merchants selling the animals for the sacrifices and changing foreign money into Jewish currency so that they can have offerings to the temple, which was another cursing and a disruption of the status quo of the culture around him. which is a dangerous thing to do in case you don't know. It was this latter disruption, by the way, that got him arrested a couple days later. A thought I have, although no Christian would agree with this, is that it could be said that he was getting a God complex. I'm better than you, and you better believe in me, and you better do as I say, and I'm above the law. Oftentimes, we in our lives kind of get a little bit puffed up. Not you, but you've seen people do that, right? Other people. Okay? And we think that we're above the law, we think that we're better than, and often in our lives, this is the beginning of the unraveling and the downfall from our mighty and comfortable perch. In the story, we next see him having a Passover meal with his disciples, followed by kneeling in the Garden of Gethsemane, sweating blood out of sheer terror. He knows what's coming. He knows what's coming. And praying to not have to go through it. The famous Father, take this cup from me. My sense, he was pretty sure he wouldn't really die. But as we all know, there's a big difference between pretty sure, between knowing about, and actually stepping out and doing it. Yes? Okay? And here's the biggest, doing it, facing death. Is the life within me greater than that? As we realize transformation is happening to us, and from our ego's point of view, it's happening to us. Yes? Yes, not for us, to us. As we realize that, all of our unresolved fears show up for the purpose of healing and release, even though it does not feel that way. Can I get an amen? In the moment when I got the diagnosis a couple weeks ago of having diabetes, my first reaction was, it couldn't be happening to me. After all, I'm a religious science minister. I think healthy thoughts. I'm better than all my other family members who have diabetes. I just know that I can pray this thing right out of my life. The process of transformation calls for, this is a dirty word, surrender. Breathe. Surrender. And this is where Jesus utters that great line, not my will, but thine be done. We let go of resistance and realize two things. Number one, we're going anyways, whether we like it or not. When transformation is happening, it's like we finally get, yeah, we're going there. And number two, we realize that we have to trust something greater than our ego. We have to trust something greater than our individual self. And this and the next step are why people run away from transformation. Because the next step after this is death. Nice try. Next step after this is death. Death of the ego, death of our comfortable life as it is now. I like to say you can't have a resurrection without a crucifixion. The caterpillar has to completely in order to become the butterfly. I did a 47-day writing for this Lenten period, and in my writing the other day, I quoted an old blues song, the title of which is, "Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die." We all like to avoid suffering. Yes? The compost isn't pretty. It doesn't smell good. But it feeds our growth. After our suffering in ego death, which is not the end, right? In any of those stories, winter is not the end of nature. The crucifixion is not the end of Jesus, at least in the story. So after our suffering and ego death comes waiting. Waiting. Why hasn't my resurrection shown up yet? I want it, and I want it now. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should go back. I'm feeling emotionally kind of bereft. Maybe I should go to the bakery. Have just one pastry. Maybe I could take just another drink. Maybe I could go back to my old job or my old spouse, just for a little bit. Douglas Christie says, what is being asked of us in this moment is patient attention, a willingness to slow down, listen, and look, a willingness to let go of our expectation, to accept the possibility that our efforts may not bear any fruit, at least not in the way we have been hoping they will. That old saying, make God laugh, tell him your plans. Joseph Campbell said something that we have to let go of the life that we planned to open to the life that wants to come through us. Our spoiled child ego hates waiting. I want my good and I want it now. But as with many things in life, we have to wait. We have to wait, not the weight of avoidance. I'm going to put that off and put that off and put that off, but the weight of the patience, the weight of letting this newfound life gel and bloom and letting what needs to happen externally happen. Until finally one day we wake up and realize we are completely different than we used to be. There's no big lights and sirens. There's no voice of God, angels announcing, all that stuff. But we are transformed and we suddenly realize that we are not that person anymore. We may even look the same on the outside, but everything internally has changed. And this is transformation. This is waking up. This is the purpose of that whole process. Sometimes this process, this path of transformation opens because we're ready for it and we consciously choose to go. There are a few people who will do that. Some of them are sitting in this room. They say, yes, I am willing. I feel the nudge, I feel the call, I am willing. Other times we seem forced into it by external circumstances. That silly diagnosis, the ending of a relationship or a job, a death or illness, all sorts of seemingly external causes. But we end up on the path of transformation. And the spiritual path is a path of transformation. We all like to say we're spiritual people on a spiritual path, yes? Yes. The path is a path of transformation. It's a path of waking up from our dreams, from our what Don Miguel Ruiz calls the mitote, the hypnosis, the trance. And here's the interesting news. Everyone is on a spiritual path. Just because you go to a certain church or practice a certain thing doesn't mean you're on a spiritual path and your neighbor isn't. Even my neighbor's on a spiritual path. He's here today. Consciously or unconsciously, whether we know it or not, we're still on that path, and transformation is always the way and the purpose of that path. Having done it both ways, I can assure you an attitude of willingness and surrender instead of kicking and screaming makes the path less painful. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, unless a grain of wheat falls and dies in the ground, it is just a grain of wheat left alone. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. You don't have to. In fact, you can't force transformation. Sorry? But you can recognize it when it comes and say, not my ego's will, but my high self's will be done. Happy transformation. This week, one spiritual practice, I want to invite you to ask, where in my life am I being called towards transformation? Take a breath. Where in my life am I being called, pulled, pushed, dragged, kicking and screaming, whatever, towards transformation? Will I say yes? Or will I fight the inevitable and continue to fight? And be like Jonah. This whole week, Richard Rohr was doing a talk on Jonah, or writing on Jonah, and be like Jonah, who ran in the opposite direction to get away from the call of God, and ends up, of course, in the belly of a big fish and dumped out in Nineveh, where he was supposed to go in the first place. Which one do you want to do? So are you willing to ask and contemplate and sit with, where in my life am I being called towards transformation? Great. Take a breath. And by the way, know that you don't do it alone. I'm going to close with a quote from Rachel Srubus, who's a Presbyterian minister. She says, "The truth that you and I may try to avoid, the pain we're loath to face, point the way toward our freedom from captivating lies that perpetuate our suffering. When you and I embrace the essential paradox that to lose is to gain, that to die is to live, we come to spirit. We come to that infinite presence. There, the broken pieces of the world are gathered and made more complete and beautiful than they were before they broke. A couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, I talked about the Japanese art of kintsugi, where you take a porcelain or a dish that's been broken and fill it in, repair it with gold. So the dish is more beautiful than it was before it was broken. She says, God integrates all fractious dualities into the wholeness of life. God integrates all fractious realities, all of our places of separation, into wholeness, into the wholeness of life. So we have an affirmation. And say this with me. I am willing to be transformed and awakened to my true life. I am willing to be transformed and awakened to my true life. So it is. Just need a little circulation, right? Some fresh air. What's that? No, yeah, we're hot. And so look around the faces of God, feel the hearts of God. Recognize that your face and your heart are one of those hearts of God. And so I simply know that there is this one infinite presence. It is pure love. It is pure good. Greater than we are. And yet, we are within it as it is within us. So we are the nature of the divine also expressing. And so I speak my word from this awareness that we are love, that we are good, that we are joy, that we continue the process of transformation, which is the process of life. We say yes to it and we flow with that process. We remember that wonderful psalm that, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, because Spirit is with us. Spirit is right here. And so we lean into that consciousness. We lean into that awareness. We lean into God. And we are supported in our process, which is simply the remembering the truth of who we are, the returning to the awareness of our spiritual nature, our nature as spirit. And so in gratitude for every person who has the courage to take this journey, knowing that that includes all of us, I simply release this word into law, knowing that it is already being formed and made so. And we simply affirm that by saying together, and so it is.